Okay, everybody, welcome to the October 23rd, 2023 meeting of the Portland Board of Education Finance, Operations, and Personnel Committee. It is 1:32 p.m. and we are getting started. We have, let's see, I am the chair of the committee. We have committee members, Board Member Opperman and Board Member Figdor with us. Board Member Youssef is hopefully going to be joining us as well. We also have the squares. Oh, Board Member Youssef is here. Yay. And we also have Board Chair Lentz with us. And then from staff, I'm sorry for the halting way that I'm speaking. The squares are moving around on me while I'm talking. So we have with us from staff, we have Superintendent Scallon, we have Helene DeBartolomeo, we have Barrett Wilkinson, and I think that is, that's the crew we have with us today. So I am going to start with public comment, and I'm going to start the public comment section of the meeting with a brief reminder about the rules of public comment. So members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the schools, except for personnel matters or complaints concerning specific employees or students, which shall be addressed through separate established policies and procedures. Comments are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. It's 6 if somebody is using an interpreter to make their comment, and an individual cannot relinquish a portion of their allotted time to another speaker. Committee members and other board members in attendance will not be responding to comments. Speakers must refrain from engaging in disruptive conduct, including but not limited to using vulgar and or obscene language, threatening others using words or by other actions using pejorative or discriminatory language with reference to a person or a group on the basis of their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, descent, gender, or other identity factor, making defamatory comments exceeding the allotted time limits, talking over or interrupting others, offering repetitive comments, and offering comment on matters unrelated to the school district's programs, policies, or operations. Any public comment that is contrary to these rules will be stopped. If you want to give public comment, raise your hand in Zoom. You would begin by introducing yourself and giving your name and your address. I will keep the time and indicate when there are 30 seconds remaining and when the time is over. And if you get to the end of the 3 minutes and you would like more time, you can ask for that. We have one attendee and there are no hands raised in Zoom. So I am going to close public comment. And we can move on to our agenda. Let's see. So I believe the first, go ahead, sorry. Was somebody? Okay. All right. So let's start with the first item on our agenda. So just to sort of give folks an overview of how this meeting is going to go, we have one item on which there may need to be board committee action, and that is the superintendent evaluation process and policy. It is the purview of this committee to be responsible for the process and structure of the superintendent evaluation. So we're going to talk about that. We are going to get a finance update in terms of the work that the finance team has been doing, how that's going to tie in with our upcoming budget process work, and talk about, what pieces of information committee members feel they need in order to move on with that. Operationally, we're going to get an update as well. We are not, the agenda doesn't have any specific personnel items on it because we had such a good personnel update at our last business meeting. So that would be redundant at this time. So the first item that we're going to talk about is the superintendent evaluation, which is board policy CBI. And I am going to open it up to discussion. Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
I have a motion just to update the language. There's the policy uses school committee throughout, and we should take this opportunity to update it to Portland Board of Education and then school board.
I agree. And to make sure I understand and that everybody who is either watching or will watch the recording of this meeting, I want to make sure that I understand the motion would be to change that phrasing in policy CBI, but not to change the content or basically the meat of the evaluation process itself, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just a quick update on terminology, since we are not the school committee. That is not an accurate characterization of us.
Yeah. Super. Can I have a second for that motion? Board Member Youssef, thank you. Super. Okay. So I believe this might be, as chair of this committee, the first time that I have held a vote. Perhaps not, but it certainly is not a super familiar or common thing lately. So we are going to do Board Member Lentz, go ahead.
Just one quick question, just making sure we'll have time for more discussion after you vote on this motion.
About the superintendent evaluation?
Yes.
Okay. Would you prefer that we vote and then have discussion, or have discussion and then vote?
You can vote on this motion, but just making sure that there's still going to be room for other discussion about the.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So the motion in front of us right now is to update policy CBI to replace the phrasing school committee and unit with Board of Education. And because we are in committee, I'm going to have us vote by show of hands. Show of hands for committee members who's in favor. It is unanimous. Motion passes. Wonderful. Thanks, folks. And I see that Dr. Sarah Warren has joined us. Hello. Want to make sure that everybody recognizes that you're here. Okay. Chair Lentz, what was it that you would like to talk about in terms of superintendent evaluation?
And I apologize for not bringing this to the committee in advance of this meeting, but just something that I recognized today is in the language of the evaluation. There isn't anything that nods to the legal requirements or policies that need to be passed on an annual basis. And I think it would be great to incorporate that. I think it could be a very easy add within the operations and management standard 8, but just some language. And I'm trying to find it's in another place that it's like the board oversees the superintendent with the regular policies and regulations. But I would like to add that. As a follow-up question, I'm curious about, so in its current phrasing and current format, the board could certainly evaluate. I mean, my understanding is that the board could evaluate the superintendent's activities in that category as part of category 8, even though it's not explicitly included in the phrasing, correct? Okay. Are you suggesting that we might consider at some point explicitly putting that phrasing in? I think it should be explicitly within the evaluation. Okay. Yeah. So in a future meeting, we can take that up. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention around superintendent evaluation is just to acknowledge that anybody else who may have gone into board docs and looked at the policies might have noticed that it looks like there's a redundant or a duplicate policy. CBI R1 is not current. So we can look to have that removed. And I understand, if I'm understanding correctly, there is also currently an initiative or project underway to clean up the policies that are in board docs. Is that accurate? Super. Okay. So that can hopefully be folded into that effort. Any other comments, questions, concerns about the superintendent evaluation? Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. So you said that we would come back to adding that language in a future meeting. Is there a reason that we couldn't do it today so that it would be in this evaluation? Oh, I misunderstood what you were. Okay.
So certainly, do you have are you bringing a motion or, I mean, you're not a committee member, so I don't think you can.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll look for a motion to add that phrasing. Thank you, Board Member Opperman.
I would move to change or add language that reflects the superintendent's obligation to maintain policy documentation and update regularly. Is that sufficient, or do we need to add something else to that?
Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but I'm a little bit, we need to be more specific.
Go for it.
I don't know. I'm not,
That's why I'm just pulling it off the top of my head.
I think, Sarah, if you can write some quick language.
No, that's what I'm trying to do. This just came to me in the last hour or so. What I'm referring to is there's a set of policies that, according to the MSBA, needs to be approved every year. Mm-hmm. Things like that, things like state regulations. I think that those just need to be explicitly named within the evaluation.
And so would it be acceptable to take that away, get the explicit list of, those things and bring them back to the November meeting? Is that okay? Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the place for those requirements should necessarily be in this policy, but maybe I'm just not understanding what you're trying to add. So if I'm not understanding, my apologies.
Board Member Opperman, go ahead. I think a little background on this. I know that I'm on the policy committee, and we've been trying to go through, we are overseeing the process of going over all of the policies that are written in the big book. And I would think that we could write something and present it to the committee tomorrow, although you do want to bring it up today, Chair Lentz. I think that if we're going to take our time and do this well, we need to spend a little bit of effort at that. And but that is a result of the policy committee wanting to have something relative to the superintendent evaluation. So I don't know if that would, is that appropriate for you? I mean, Sarah Lentz, Chair?
I mean, I do think that, and apologies, I take full responsibility for not getting this to this committee earlier than this and coming with suggested language. So I think that what everybody is saying is noted, that we need to get that, we need to do the language, but we also need to move forward with getting Ryan's first evaluation done. So I think that I will suggest that we move ahead with it is as it is written, and then work within the policy committee to change the language. I can get that to policy committee by tomorrow, that then would take effect later at a different evaluation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also, I mean, like we talked about a few minutes ago, if it is within the purview of Category 8, then it can still be included in the evaluation that we do, even if it's not explicitly listed, correct? Okay. Board Member Opperman, is your hand up as a?
It is up.
Okay.
My comment is it will not be a full year before we evaluate again anyway. So I think whatever we change, my presumption on this is that we would have a periodic evaluation, so that I think whatever we do put in and goes through the policy changes, it will show up at the next one. So even if Chair Lentz, you are concerned, that I think that takes care of it. Okay.
Agreed. And Board Member Youssef, I wanted to just check in. I saw your hand was up and now it's not. Wanted to make sure that you have what you need.
No, Board Member Figdor mentioned what I was about to say. I wasn't fully understanding the whole picture, so we might need more time.
Okay, super. Anything else before we close out this topic? Okay, wonderful. So, thank you, folks. And we are now going to move on to staff updates. So I will turn the next portion of the meeting over to Superintendent Scallon.
Afternoon, everyone. It is great to see you on a Monday afternoon and to have a slightly revised time. So thank you for being here. I'm really excited that Barrett is here. Barrett did a deep presentation at the last board meeting. And so we do not have additional personnel updates at this point, but we do, as per agenda requests, want to share updates around operations, which would be transportation and facilities, and then to share updates around finance, with the idea that the finance is a preview for what will be, again, a much deeper dive at our November 14th board meeting. And with that, I'm going to actually pass it over here in a second. But because I don't think we've done formal introductions of these folks at committee meetings, just feel very fortunate that we have the terrific threesome here of Barrett, and then getting joined by Sarah Warren and Helene DiBartolomeo. Feel like we struck gold and hit the lottery twice. With having Helene and Sarah join the team. And so very excited to have them take ownership and to lead a lot of this work over here. If it works for Sarah and Helene, I'm happy to drive slides and do that. And you guys can then speak. Does that sound good? And so with that in mind, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah to give some of the operations updates.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. And it's great to be here with all of you. I am speaking to you from the transportation office where I have been sitting since October 5th. As you know, we've had a leadership transition here. We're in the middle of one. And so while we go through this process of identifying the right person to fill the director role in transportation, I'm sitting here with a team pretty much full time. I'm spending the time working with folks essentially to, first of all, deepen my own understanding of the department and what's happening here, what some of the needs are, the strengths, who the folks are, the whole team, and how we function, how we interact with the rest of the district, with families, community, et cetera. So it has been a really helpful and enlightening experience so far. And I wanted to share a little bit with you about some of what we're learning and some of what we're doing, not only to kind of understand and analyze and think about where we should be heading, but also to address some of the immediate challenges that we're facing. So I'm still on the, there we go. Okay. So all of that also leads us to potentially building out a multi-year strategy, which I'll talk about in a couple minutes. So the biggest priority right now is the immediate, but we are also really learning a lot that I think will inform the future plan. Okay. So just as a starting point, our regular bus service, as you probably know, serves a lot of our students. About 2,400 are routed every day. We did introduce new routing software just this year. And so something called Traversa that is brand new to folks in the district. It is more efficient, more effective, more user-friendly, as I understand it, than our previous software, and we're better able to get support from the company, but it is actually new. So it has been an adjustment for folks. And at the very start of the school year, it created some hiccups in terms of the way that the software was routing students and whatnot. We've worked our way through most of those now, but we continue to constantly examine routes, and we're always getting new students. And so that changes routes too as we go. So some of the hiccups that happened at the start of the year are gone. And then sometimes when we're changing routes to add students, we end up creating new ones and we have to fix those too. So it's kind of an ongoing process that we go through there. One of the other kind of key pain points has been around when we have people out, and we've had a few waves of illness. And I'll be honest, I'm a little anxious right now because I think we may be hitting another one. And so when we get to that place and we have drivers and or assistants that are absent in larger numbers than usual, we end up having to send out pretty much everybody who's here who is in any way qualified to get on a bus and support. So if someone has a CDL, a bus driver's license, then they will go out and drive a bus. And if we can assist, we go out and assist, myself included. So I think that's a short-term sort of solution, but what we're working on right now is trying to build more safety mechanisms into that system so that when we do have significant absences, we can be better prepared with backup plans. For example, we know that we have ed techs in some schools who are very happy to ride and support before or after their usual day. And so we are, engaging them and thinking about how we might better collaborate with others to fill in some of those gaps. So as a result of a lot of, hard work and shifting things around, we've managed to get by even during those most difficult times with only 2 bus cancellations on our regular routes. So moving on, unfortunately, we can go to the next slide. The same has not been true of our work with athletics. We've had more of a challenge there in trying to address those issues. Obviously, I'm still only a couple months in, but what I'm told is that this is not an entirely new issue for us. We have struggled with this for a while, but it has certainly been pronounced this fall, in particular with a lot of our middle school athletics trips. So we've had to cancel a number of trips just because we didn't have any transportation options available. It's really a mix of factors that have played into that. And, some of it is just the timing of those runs. The athletics trips need to go at about the same time that almost all of our drivers are out driving our regular runs. And so typically, unless they can move the schedule, we can't send our own drivers, which means getting contractors. And the contractors were very busy in the fall, and we didn't have an advanced agreement with them to say that they were going to be committed to our runs. So we've worked together closely with athletic directors and with school leaders. We fixed some of the problems for the last couple of weeks of the fall season, so we were able to meet a lot more of those needs. And now we are working on preparing for the winter season so that we can have those, mostly will be contractors again, lined up in advance and not be down to the wire in terms of trying to find someone to cover the trip. So we should be much better off, I think, for winter and spring. And as we look to next year, we'll make sure that we have that system and whatever agreements we need in place so that when we get to fall athletics, we're ready to go. Next slide. In addition to the general sort of how we run the buses every day and the athletics, and I would say, it's not only athletics, it's things like after school programming and field trips. So we're working on tightening up all of those things. But I recognize, and I think it's not unique to transportation, but certainly in this office, there's a need for really examining, updating, drafting standard operating procedures. I think the more we can clearly define on paper or on screen exactly how each aspect of this team's operation should function, and then we train people on it, and then we can hold people accountable for it. It's the process I think we need in place more clearly, because what happens is when we don't have that, people are relying on their understanding of or their memory of how we've always done it. And that leaves too much open for interpretation. And it makes it harder to train around it, to hold people accountable for it, and to create the kind of a culture we want. I think in general, my finding is that team morale here is pretty low. It's not a secret. People have been pretty open about it. And it's partly because it's a stressful job. And people, I think for the most part, really take this work very seriously. They care about the students. They work hard. And sometimes it's tough to be driving a bus and building relationships and supporting students and dealing with behavioral challenges, lots of things going on at one time. And there has been a lot of turnover in this office in the leadership role, which has been challenging. So in general, we're trying to do what we can to start to shift that feeling and make sure that people here feel really appreciated, to help, especially some of the things I think that create greater stress or concerns about student behavior and not feeling like it's been addressed or the loop is being closed between the school and the bus driver. So we're really trying to build those relationships and those avenues of communication so that the drivers know that they're being heard and seen and appreciated. So, and as I said, the standard operating procedures are high priority for us at this point, but we're particularly focusing in a few key areas, safety being high priority. So anything where there's a safety implication. There's also a need to really examine, which we're in the middle of now, the way that we operate our pre-K and K work, because those are the little people who need even more support. And we've got to make sure that we're doing that right, not just in terms of what the legal requirements are, but what is best practice and how are we making sure that we're following that to the best of our ability. And then in general, we always want to get better, I think, at how we coordinate with schools and families. And we're doing a lot of work around that right now as well. Okay. And then there's the longer term. So again, we're not diving into this just yet, but just kind of learning and taking notes and starting to do some of the analysis and thinking that will help us get to that place where we're able to come forward with some concrete recommendations. So we'll be drawing on some support from the Rue Institute, also doing some internal analysis here right now, and ultimately looking at the different things we may do or the structures we could create, the different ways we could think about approaching transportation to make sure that we're serving as many of our students as possible, as well as possible in the most efficient and cost-effective way possible. So as we start to engage in that process, of course, we'll want to consult with all of the different stakeholders who are part of or affected by the transportation program. So I will leave that part there. Do you want me to go on and say a bit about facilities, or do you want me to pause with the transportation part?
Can we pause for transportation, do questions, and then do the update on Lincoln?
Yeah.
That's super. Questions from committee members? Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
That last slide up. Sorry, I was slow in reading it. And then I'll just take the opportunity while I have the floor to ask a question, which is, Sarah, so makes me optimistic that you're doing this deep work that might not have been, the work that you were initially planning to jump into. But I know that it will, I know how valuable it will prove to be. So just incredibly thankful for what you're doing. I'm wondering about hiring someone to lead the transportation department, what that timeline looks like. And are we trying to do some of this laying the groundwork first, or are we moving right into a hiring process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're not rushing, I will say, on the hiring process. We have the position posted. It's actually on my to-do list today to connect with, the HR team to find out just what we already have in the hopper, but to also extend the date that's currently listed on the job description, because I want to make sure that we're really actively recruiting and trying to get the broadest and best pool of candidates that we can. I think it's always important, obviously, to try to find the right fit. And I think it's especially important this time, given the turnover we've had here, given some of the challenges we've had. And I think we're at a really exciting kind of moment in time when we can think creatively about how we do this work maybe better moving forward. So I think it's really, really important we kind of pause a minute and look for that right person. And to your second question, trying to lay some of the foundation and address some of the immediate issues so that when this person does come on board and walk in the door, it's not, a deluge. There are things that we will sort out before that person gets here so that I can hand it over, hopefully in a way that feels organized and not overwhelming to the next person.
Great. That sounds like a really good approach. And I'll just say, with respect to the third bullet here, I am very much in support and hoping we do increase our collaboration with Metro, specifically with respect to middle school students, and acknowledging that middle school students outside that 2-mile radius are having to, we're expecting to walk to school, which seems like a burden that we should not put on our students, and that has disproportionate impacts on our most marginalized students.
Thank you.
Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Great to see you, Sarah. And yeah, you certainly do know the Transportation Department. Met with them last spring, and what you said is what they say. They're very straightforward people. I had a couple questions. One had just a clarification on canceling 2 routes. Was that a one-time thing, or we have actually reorganized the whole system so that we are too few?
Thank you. That was a great question, and I should have made that clear. That was just on one day when we had a large number of staff absences. We had to cancel those 2 buses. And when I say routes, I mean every bus runs multiple routes. So we canceled 2 buses effectively, and all of the students that they served on that day had to find alternative transportation. We had put the system in place in advance in anticipation of that potentially happening. When we put the system in place, actually, it didn't happen immediately, but it did happen, I think, a week or week and a half later. And so we were ready to go with that. We had already informed schools and families that this might happen. We had school messengers set up and the list of families arranged by bus so that we could immediately let them know. So we told families first thing in the morning as soon as we realized that we weren't going to be able to service those 2 routes that day. But in general, no, we are. I'd say we are currently just kind of covering, but we're also rearranging a couple of routes to try to make them better. In particular, we've got a route that feels like it's too long for the students that are on the bus, so we're doing some rearranging there. We have some new vehicles coming, and we just had a new bus driver start today and another one who passed his test on Friday, which we were very excited about. So those couple of things are going to help alleviate a little bit of the pressure for us. We do still, as you probably know, we contract some vendors, so they have helped ease some of the burden too. But wherever we can, we want to make sure that it's our own drivers and vehicles that are transporting our kids.
Well, that you led into my second question, which was on contractors, and if we had partially, do we have a relationship with a particular contractor that we seem to be using? And is this in the budget already, or are we looking at expanding things? I don't know if that's a question you can answer, but is it going to be a reassignment of money this year?
So in terms of the vendors, we have, I guess the team here has historically over the last couple of years worked primarily with Custom Coach and Dirigo. And then we've added just recently Eastern, which was not someone we had worked with a lot, I think for a variety of reasons, but we sort of revisited that relationship and found that they, for whatever reason, were a little bit more available. And so they helped us cover a lot of those middle school athletics runs that we couldn't capture previously. So those are the 3 that we are currently primarily working with. In terms of budget, the athletics runs get charged to the schools, to the athletics budgets. The rest of the runs are, within the transportation budget. I can't say definitively right now. I need to spend some time with my friend Helene. I'm still, trying to do the deep dive into the various aspects of the budget across operations. So I can't say definitively that there won't be any adjustments needed, but we're trying to work with what we have.
Great, thank you. Board Member Youssef, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sarah. when we were talking about building the relationship and how difficult it is in terms of the stress of the job, what if you can walk me through the process when some students' behavior being kind of trigger a concern from the bus drivers, and how do we make sure we heard them and their concerns being addressed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. And again, I'd say, well, let me tell you what I think is happening now based on what I've seen, and then where I hope we're going. What I'm observing and hearing as I talk to the drivers, and even talk to, principals and other folks at the school level, is that it varies a lot. I think there are some drivers who feel more comfortable directly handling issues, who've got some strategies they tend to use with their students, some of their own best practices. So, for example, they might assign seats or move students to different parts of the bus. They might bring some students forward or separate students if there's something going on between them. They might, in one case, a driver told me, well, I'll write up the report to the school, but I don't give it to the school. I tell the student that I'll hold on to this. And if their behavior is good for the next week, then the report doesn't go in. So they have their own strategies, but I think part of what we need to do is provide people the training and coaching and support they need and sharing of best practices across the department, across different drivers and assistants, to make it more standardized. But the other thing, so there is a form that people can fill out, a driver can fill out and give it to the school. And then the schools take that and we think do something with it, and often they do. But I think one of the sort of gaps we may be experiencing is that sometimes there's no loop back to the driver. So while we may be doing some kind of a restorative process at the school level, we probably aren't always consistently engaging the driver or the bus assistant in that process. And so we sort of missed one key element of that restorative process if the folks that are driving and operating the bus are not feeling restored or clear on what the behavioral plan is or what the strategies are that work for the teachers and the folks that are dealing with the student all day. So that's part of the goal here is, again, improving and drafting a new set of standard operating procedures or an updated set where we make clear how we handle these types of situations, how this office engages with schools around these things, and then how we ensure that loop gets closed so that there's it's not just a one-way information flow, but more of a collaborative partnership. And again, I want to emphasize, I've heard some really great stories and seen some really good examples of collaboration between drivers and assistants and schools. There's a lot of really good stuff already happening. We just need to make that more systematic and consistent.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful. I am cognizant of the time and the fact that we have a lot of content to get through before 3:00. But I'm hopeful that you could maybe just quickly talk a little bit about. So I think it's fantastic. First of all, thank you so much. Great slides, great information. And the 3-year plan to sort of, do big structural work and make important improvements. I'm very excited about that. What I'm hoping you can talk about a little bit is some of the closer term work and some of the timeline around, obviously 3 years from now is way too long to help bus drivers feel appreciated. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing really soon and just maybe a couple of examples?
Sure. Just to clarify, are you speaking specifically about the morale issues or more broadly about any of the issues here?
Either, whatever you feel would be most useful for us to know about.
Yeah. So, I'd say it's a mix of things, right? I think of it in terms of personnel. So, sometimes there are individual issues or concerns being raised that need to be addressed with individual people or groups of people. And so I'm trying to make sure that we're doing that and creating an environment for folks where they feel comfortable coming in and talking. And I noticed Friday that I had kind of a steady stream of people wanting to come and talk with me about different things. So I thought that was a good sign, and not all like big crises, but just, people sometimes need a little support or thought partnership or the link to the right person in, central office to help them with something. So I think it's partly just making sure that I'm really present here with everybody. And, I'm trying to be on site with them first thing in the morning and hear through the whole process, not only so I can support it, but so that people feel, supported and the presence. So some of it is just that, showing the presence, showing the support. We actually had a team lunch and meeting on Thursday and talked through some things, gave updates. And one of the things I did there that I want to keep doing more of is opening it up for folks to give us input on how they want to see things run, what their concerns are, bringing their expertise. I think there's a huge wealth of expertise here within this department. There are people who've been around literally for decades, who've been doing this a really long time, and they know a lot more about how to run a bus than I do. So that seemed to be very welcome when I asked for some input on some things, and we'll keep doing more of that. And then, as I said earlier, I think that the standard operating procedures are really important. We can't do it all at once. I mean, the list of things we need to codify in that realm is really long. And that's why we need to start by prioritizing anything that's related to safety. I will say it's not only our standard operating procedures, but it's also how we engage with others around those. And when I was meeting with the team on Thursday and getting their input, the thing that just keeps haunting me is that across the board, they all said that multiple times a week, cars drive around their buses when they're parked, stopped with their lights on. And it just, horrifies me. And that's not just our standard operating procedures. That's how we engage with, our families, the public, the police department and other folks to address that kind of issue. So I'm not limiting it to our own internal procedures. It's also about how this department and how our team interacts with all the folks around us that we need to work with in order to make all of this run well. And I will say that is one of the other kind of key impressions that it's not brand new news, but somehow sitting here in the middle of it, it has really struck me how different this office is in a way from the other three offices in our operations team. This is a much more public-facing, constantly engaging with students, families, and members of the public in a way that the other three teams do, but not to the same degree and this level of intensity. And I think that's part of what it's part of what makes this office so important. And it's also part of what I think adds to some of the pressure and the intensity of the work here. And it's always about safety, right? Because you're moving children on vehicles. And so it's a constant safety focus, and it's got to be done well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your work. I just super quickly before I forget, and this is a blanket statement across all of the content here. And I don't know if this is a Ryan question, but at some point, if we could get these slides put into board docs, that would be really good, really good. Because I know for me, like, in a week or a month or a year, if I'm like, what? I'm going to want to be able to go in and take a look. So thank you very much. Any other last questions, comments on the topic of transportation before we hear about facilities? Okay, facilities.
I'll be really quick here. I think most people know that we had a fire that happened on October 5th in a boys' bathroom at Lincoln Middle School. We were pretty lucky in a lot of ways. One, of course, no one was hurt. People were evacuated from the building safely. We were also fortunate in that while it was a real serious fire, the damage was relatively limited. And it just so happened that it was right before a long weekend. And so there was enough work that could be done by the end of that weekend so that the school could reopen safely on Tuesday immediately after the holiday. The ongoing repairs are, I think, moving well. We've already turned back one of the 2 learning spaces that was affected, and that was given back to the school. The other one, as I understand it from facilities, should be ready tomorrow. It just had some final cleaning that had to be done, but the actual contractor work was finished. And then the last bit of work for now is the bathroom, and that should be done in about a week. So there were vendor delays with drywalling and whatnot. So that's done now, and it just has to get painted. So that will be done. And then there is flooring that needs to be replaced, but it's apparently okay for the time being. It's just, not good to leave there forever. So they will need to do that when school is out on break. So that will happen at a later time. And that's all.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from folks? Okay. Superintendent Scallon, I apologize for sort of stepping in and steering the conversation after I had handed it off to you. So I will let you continue.
No, that was perfect. Keep up. You're doing great. Yeah, I mean, we're going to, at this point, transition for the second half of the meeting and start to get into finance, and sort of thought of finance in a couple of different pieces. So one is an opportunity for Helene to start to share some of her initial reflections and what she's learning and the work she has done so far, a little bit around ADP and the transition to the new payroll, the audit that will be happening in December. And then we know that we are in a difficult budget season. And so we're going to start that work. It's already started, right? Your favorite sort of expression is it's always budget season. But so we are very much in that. And so we have a couple of things to discuss there. And so with that, I will pass it to Helene, and I'll do slides again.
Yeah. Good afternoon. So I just wanted to take first, so some of these slides are going to be where I need some interaction with the finance committee, and others are just kind of like, as Ryan suggested, just an update on what's going on with the department and all things finance. So this first slide is basically, I'm looking for some input. So I remember when I did my interview with Member Opperman was suggesting that right now we were not doing our job well as far as providing the board with financial reports. So I know where I came from. I looked at the reports that are available from Munis, and Munis has 2 reports, and I actually have the links here available. One's a historical to actual comparison report. I'm not quite sure who has seen these reports and who hasn't. So I try to give examples of both. And what I did is, this report is basically, shows you a full year budget. And then what it also does is take that moment in time. So for instance, the one that I have linked here would give you a report from July of 2023 through the month of October. But then it also provides the last 3 years at the same moment in time. So it gives you the same time frame, so that you can kind of have guide yourself through to see if like we're on track or not. The second type of report that we also have available within Munis is a year-to-date budget report. And what that does is just looks at the current year and looks at your original budget, any transfers, and what that revised budget looks like, and then comparing that to your actuals year to date, depending on at what period you're putting it through. So in this example, I provided through, again, July through October, and then it gives you an available budget as well as the percentage that's remaining. Now, from what I've done in the past, I've done kind of more of a hybrid of both, where I'm taking the data from the last 3 years, but also providing in there on your right hand margin is providing you that percentage to date And then what we're doing is, so for instance, if we know July through September is 25% of your budget, I would look at that, what that looks like, and then take anything that's above that and give variance explanation to the council and note and transcribe it in notes on the side of the report. That way, if you on a high level, I could give some explanation, and then that way, if the committee saw any additional information that they wanted some more information on, we could provide that to you. So I just wanted to get some input. So here's Ryan showing you right now the historical actual. This one's the one where it's the full year budget compared to your actual at a certain point in time, but also the last 3 years with those at the same point in time. Then I don't know, Ryan, if you could show the other one real quick. And then this one's the one that has your just looking at the current year, but also providing your available budget and then the percentage used. What I'm used to doing is actually taking out all of the encumbrance pieces and just finding out what your revised budget is with your 3 years. And then on the right column, you would have your available budget and then a percentage used. Is what I'm saying is what I'm used to showing in a hybrid format and putting it in a context of kind of like providing all of that information. So I was just trying to get some input from the finance committee of, what they would prefer, what they would like as far as moving forward, since this is an opportunity for us to, begin that relationship of, that transparency and providing that information to you on at least a minimum a monthly basis so that you can see where we're at, and as well as not just the general fund, but all funds. So at this time, I guess I would ask for a little bit of input.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So I was on mute when I said board member Figdor, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Helene. For my purposes, I think that on a regular basis, providing the year-to-date totals, the year-to-date information as you've described it, works well. And then during budget season, I would like to see the historical actuals as well, so I can contextualize more as we're getting into decision-making on budgeting.
Right.
Board member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you, Helene. This looks good. I appreciate the work. And the question, I could agree with board member Figdor that we need, it's more of what's going on right now in just this year from day to day. The question, again, I'm not a budget person, but the encumbrances of things that we can't move anywhere, correct? And we need to know that monthly. I don't know, but that would be a question. And the other question is, can this, what you have in front of us right now, be printed out monthly? Thanks.
So the first question on encumbrances are merely us taking out what's called a purchase order with the intent to spend the money. So then when they do that, it can then not make that budget available for any other purpose. So that way it's a good tool that's used to make sure that we don't go over budget.
Okay.
And then on the second piece, yes, this report came straight out of Munis and can be printed on demand at any moment.
Thank you very much.
Helene, can I just check one piece of understanding on that?
Yes.
In terms of timing, it can be printed, obviously, at any given point. Usually, how much will the report lag from the actual date?
Yes, that's a good point. What happens is, so for instance, we just had our payroll on 10/20, but I would have to check to make sure that this reflects that month in it. So what I would always make sure is that if there is missing information in relation to the full month, most likely what I'll do, for instance, just was like 10-2. I'm not going to give you a budget report that reflects something through October because obviously we just got into October. So you wouldn't want to see that information in that format. So it's just a matter of making sure that the timing is correct and when we pull data to provide it. And what I could always do too is provide some notes on the bottom of, if there is something not in here yet or something came in that's larger than what would be for a month, we could always put notes on the bottom as to explain maybe the reason for the percentage being a little on the high side or not. Again, which is why we would use that variance on the end and put some notes on it to explain why we're over or under the variance. The percentage used based on, on an allocation percentage. So for 4 months in or 3 months in based on that percentage of 12 months.
I'm also going to, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I didn't know if there was any more comment on this piece. I'm just trying to make sure that we get through everything. So.
Yep. Well, Board Chair Lentz, I will go to you next, but I just wanted to say thank you so much. This is super. I'm very excited about the prospect of, getting this information monthly. I would like to maybe consider, Board Member Figdor, I agree with what you said about getting the budget to actuals as we prepare for budget season. I think I would be interested in considering maybe like twice a year, at some other checkpoint throughout the year. Also being mindful of it, like I would only pursue that and ask for that if it truly is just clicking a button and printing. I'm not asking staff to spend a lot of additional resources and capacity to make that happen. But again, thank you so much. This is really great. Board Chair Lentz, go ahead.
I just echo all of that. Just having this in front of us and being able to access it regularly is great. I think I would probably land in being able to get both of them if it's not a huge lift. And eventually down the road, if it's possible to get almost like an appendix that has definitions of what is in each of these categories, I think that would be really helpful for board onboarding and budget conversations. But again, not an urgent need, but down the road, I think that could be great.
Yeah, I honestly had to play around with these reports. Even for me, who came from a school district as well, I was noticing that when I pulled the whole data element, all of the data elements, we were talking about a report that was over 200 pages. And so I was like, I can't give that to you to read. You'll never want to talk to me again. So, so I was looking for something that made a little bit more sense for just generalization of understanding at least categories that at least we can look at it at some level that kind of made sense to all of us. So I actually used what we have set up in the system as DOE codes, and it's more of like the function of the expense, of where like the different funding is being used for. So I thought that would be a good way to show it, because obviously you could see the difference between the funding that's being used for instruction, which would include salary, benefits, supplies, any of those things, compared to, say, if you move halfway down, there's one in there for fiscal services, which would be anything that's related to like my department and the things that we're doing here, like the audit, contracted services, all those things would be expensed there, our employees and staff. So I thought this was a good way to be able to show the information reported wise as far as the where we're spending our money for the school district. But yes, we'll definitely start breaking it down a little bit more and have like a crosswalk to help those who not very familiar with the instructional or the school district lingo, I should say.
That'd be fantastic. Also cut down on questions.
Yes.
So it's a win-win. I really appreciate that. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands for questions or comments. So I think we can move ahead.
So now I'm just going to basically go over a little bit of some of the things that have been going on as far as what's happening with getting ready for the end of the year audit for 2023, and any of those other outstanding items that we had going on coming into this position. So just to give just a good briefing of what ADP has been working on. So we have completed on our cash reconciliations, the accounts payable. And then the payroll side of the cash is also being finalized. The city had provided us some reconciliation items that had some variances. And so we're trying to find out, they basically gave us like a spreadsheet with just numbers of saying there's a difference, but they didn't explain what they were comparing to give us the difference. So we're trying to get that information from them so we can finalize that. The accounts payable reconciliations, which is basically the auditors will for the end of the year will normally take all of our expenses all the way out to 60 days past our end of year and determine whether or not any of those invoices that we paid in the 60 days following the end of the school year or the end of the fiscal year are related to the 23 year, or should it be in the 24 year? And so they've done that work and that's complete. And they've made sure that we were ready for anything so when I speak auditors, I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Barry Dunn, who is an audit firm, but they're working for us, versus auditors of the city that come in and review our end of year. So I will refer to Barry Dunn as an extension of the finance department, just for so we're not confused here. So Barry Dunn did do that and made sure everything had everything, anything past the 60 days recorded properly, so that when we get our audit at the end of the year, we're set there. So there are some items that have not been completed, and it's a very time-consuming process. One of those is the Maine PERS and the voluntary retirement. So Maine PERS is a beast, as you know. One of the issues and I guess I'm going to give you my findings as the new finance director coming into this position. So one of the issues that we're having with Maine PERS is the way the system was set up for Munis. So Munis, if the information in the system is not set up properly, then it makes it very difficult to provide the information that we need to pull to provide it to Maine PERS. If it's not entered into the system correctly, then when we try to pull the data, it needs a lot of cleaning and scrubbing. And when you're dealing with over 1,500 employees, that can be very cumbersome. So apparently, I've been in touch with the CFO over at Maine PERS, and I made sure I made best friends with them. Wanted them to be friends with us rather than their enemy, because I do want to make this work and make it right with them. And they have lots of concerns about the data that we've been providing them. So much so that I guess they have been having employees who have been asking about their payouts. And I have been asked to provide them a payroll information from April and May of 2017, because they need to verify some of the data that we had provided to them. One of the concerns that they have is that this Maine PERS is one of those situations that I was told that by Maine PERS that has been an ongoing issue for a very, very long time. So they're very concerned with a lot of the data that we were providing them, and how that information was provided to them. So I just want to give you that up front. So what I have done is I have enlisted Barry Dunn to assist us with this because it's getting very serious now. And so they advised us that they have the capacity to help us with the reconciliation of Maine PERS, because we're dealing with, they have personnel who know how to handle and report this information. So so I just wanted to give you a heads up on that, because that one was kind of one of the ones that has been a serious issue that we're dealing with. Because of those items, Barry Dunn is feeling that we're kind of behind on getting ready for an end of the year audit. So they were hoping that by October 31st, we would have everything done. And because we have so many outstanding items that run deep, they're already told us that we're not meeting that deadline, but we don't have the actual auditors on site till December. It's December, the field work is December 4th through the 6th. So we still have some time, but I don't know if we're going to have any type of resolution for the Maine PERS piece and the voluntary retirement before the auditors come on site for their on-site work. We're also working currently on our current data that's in the system for for personnel. That's another issue where we're seeing why we're getting a lot of So we have a lot of a lot of our payroll issues that we're dealing with are coming from the information in the system, the current information. A lot of the information that is in Munis, the reason why it's incorrect is from many different places. So it could be from the school site, not providing that information to HR on a quick enough basis, or it could be from just the lag time between the time that HR gets it and the next payroll process. So everything that we do here, it's a bit cumbersome. A lot of it is paper pushing and not electronically workflowed. So it makes it very difficult to make sure that the timing is correct and that there's checks and balances in place. So HR has lend a hand to the payroll department by going out to the school sites, discussing, each HR generalist has taken their locations with a roster, and they have gone out and worked with each of the administrators at each of the school sites. So at this point, HR is in their final phases of scrubbing that data, and anything they can't fix in the system themselves, they're bringing it to me and bringing that forward to make sure that we can finish finalizing any data that's in the system that needs to be corrected. It's not 100% fail proof, because as we keep moving on, if we don't fix the process moving forward, we're going to continue falling back into this. But at the same time, we're doing this because we're feeling like moving into ADP, the process is going to change once again. So we're trying really hard to just at least communicate between HR and payroll as closely as possible until we move to the ADP system. So that way we're not asking people to change how they do things and we're working right now with HR, myself, and benefits. We're all going to start working on creating some written procedures on how things are going to process moving forward. So everyone's on the same page. Sorry, that one was a mouthful. So the overall reconciliation between payroll munis and finance munis, that correlates to a lot with again, is the payroll. So there's a difference between what we see in the system and in our payroll side versus what we see in the payroll system on our GL side. The amounts aren't large or material. but there is a slight difference, and Barry Dunn is working with us to clean that up and finish that up. Next slide. Barry Dunn is also assisting with grant reconciliations. So one of the things that I noticed what happened when I first got here was that our grant accountant had just literally started maybe a month before I did. And not only did she start a month before I did, but I didn't realize that the position she was in was a brand new position. And unfortunate for her, she really had no guidance on how to process, there was no procedures written anywhere on how to invoice or any of that. But we have Barry Dunn on site with us. He's actually, his name's Ray. He's here 2 to 3 days a week, and he's helping us create procedures and solid processes that include time and effort for our grants, which is something that we don't have written anywhere in our documentation. And she's working very close with him on the proper way of invoicing. One of the other things that we've realized through this process is that when we go out and invoice, normally what would happen, and I'm going to be a little bit of an accounting geek, but we're supposed to, once you send out your invoice as a business or an organization, what you're supposed to do is basically do a journal entry that shows that you're expecting for that revenue to come in. And you create what's called a receivable. So that way, when the money comes in, then you're clearing your receivable, but you can recognize that we've already invoiced for the expenses that we were anticipating to cover, right? So we would fill that in as a revenue. So we wouldn't look like, so we can show that we've invoiced for the funds we've used. Well, we're currently not doing it that way. And so that's something else we need to start working on, is creating receivables to show what we're waiting. Like right now, if you ask me how much money are we expecting from the state, we don't have those numbers because we have not been processing it that way. And it's no fault of hers. Again, she's a new employee that just started and had no procedures, but we're working on creating procedures for that role as well. As far as fixed assets, Barry Dunn did their initial analysis. They worked with the city on this. And the silly thing about this whole thing is they found out that basically the city doesn't even ask the school district for their additions or disposals. What they do is they scan our GL and they determine for us what our additions are, and no one has ever asked for the school district what the disposals are. So through that process, Barry Dunn had asked me who would be the best person to kind of use to coordinate that information for them and help them gather that from each of the departments. And I volunteered Sarah Warren. And the reason why is because she's over a lot of the departments that are going to be purchasing those large type items, IT, your food service department, your maintenance department. All of those departments are going to be the ones that really have a huge hand in how we purchase those bigger assets. So we've set up a meeting to meet with Sarah so that she can help us coordinate disposables that we've had and probably clean up what we show on our books from the city and get as much of those disposals off. So there might be some large variances in disposals on the financials. It doesn't really have a bearing on what our financials look like. It shows that there's a lack of communication between the city and the school district when it comes to that. So that was a little disappointing. The other item that the Barry Dunn is also working with us on is there's a GASB rule that just came out about determining whether or not certain software subscriptions should be labeled as a lease or not. And there was an early implementation done by the city, but the city never advised us that they did an early implementation of the GASB rule last year. So we're trying to play catch up now and get all of our ducks in a row in regards to that, and trying to make sure that we are compliant with the GASB rule as well. So Barry Dunn is also working with Sarah on that, since IT falls under the operations, to get that information that they need in order to determine what needs to be on the financial reports and what doesn't. And then the last piece that we have Barry Dunn working on for us is one of the things that I was told when I started here was that we don't really have anyone here that does audit work on the internal accounts, which is the school accounts. Where I came from, we had what's called an internal auditor who would audit the purchases made by the schools with the internal funds, because there are a lot of rules in place in regards to what they should be using those funds for. And so Barry Dunn's going to do an initial audit or test. And this is all internal for us. And they're going to pick one high school, one middle school, and one elementary school, and then give us some findings. And then we're going to use that information to start creating some procedures and training for our school sites as far as helping them understand what the expectation of, when you're allowed to write funds, how you're able to do it, what you should be collecting if you pay someone out of those funds, and what you can and cannot pay out of those. So there's more to come on that one. So I'll leave it there, and I'll pause there and see if anybody had any questions so far.
Not seeing any. Oh, Board Chair Lentz, go ahead.
Sorry, it just takes a couple minutes to get the off mute.
Yep.
Helene, thank you for this. I also just, I find it very helpful that you're really kind of like getting back to the studs of the finance department and really, building processes and procedures and written documentation about operations. I just think that is such needed work, and I'm just glad that you are leading that. Could you talk a little bit more about Maine Purse and are those current accounts, or is that historical? And is it ongoing contributions that are not right? Has there been any corrections to the historical ones, or are you looking at a big chunk of time? And then if you could speak to what do the penalties look like for this? Do we have potential fines coming down the road for us, or something else that would happen if these aren't corrected by a certain date?
Sure. Those are all really, really good questions. So first of all, we're not going to get fined. One of the things that we're working with them is making sure that we're providing them estimated payments so that they can at least invest the funds, so that once we report to them who the allocations came from, it's just a matter of reporting, who contributed what funds is what they're going to be waiting for at that point. What their concern is how it's been done, because the data in the system isn't clean. Things were done in a kind of archaic method of providing the information to them. And they are very hesitant to accept the information that we're providing to them now. It's just a matter of just working very closely with them. Again, it's just rebuilding that relationship with them. I think they've lost a lot of confidence in the school district because of the data we were providing. I pulled the person off of who was creating the reports and sending it to them. I took them off of that just so that I could have some sense of what it looked like for myself. And I also had concern for it, but again, having that relationship and working closely with them has helped a lot. in preventing us from seeing any negative outcome. The other piece is she explained to me that we're not alone. We're not the only school district that ended up in a situation like this, that there was actually another school district that ended up in kind of in a similar circumstance, and they've been working with them, and they're finally they generally have all the information they need, and then they're going back and they're kind of auditing some of the information and determining what is still open and needs to be mended or not. So a lot of what we're finding out, and the reason why we have to reopen information back from 2017 has to do with, I believe, some of the employees that are coming into retirement now and seeing the information that we reported as incorrect, saying, like, for instance, it looks like some employees were doubled up and other employees didn't receive any credit at all. And this is, this ties back to service credits. If we don't show that they were working at that time, it can truly affect the amount of retirement they receive. And so they're very concerned and very upset right now. But I have her in a place where I've spoken to her, we're like besties now, and I assured her that we're gonna make this right, and we're gonna fix this. So that's helped a lot.
Thank you for that. Board Member Youssef, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Helen, for the presentation. The data needs to be fixed. Is it ongoing need, or is it specifically areas that you already know?
It's a little bit of both. I think it's just a matter of training employees on the understanding of how the system works. That's one of the things that I noticed working in Munis is things were not set up properly. And so if you feel like you're going to fix one thing, you might end up breaking another thing because you make assumptions that it's going to work a certain way and it wasn't set up to work that way. So when you make the assumption, something else might break. So it's been an ongoing struggle, to say the least, in regards to trying to have the minimum error every payroll. But unfortunately, we still end up with, I would say, 4 to 5% error ratio on our payroll. And pretty significant errors too, which is, it's deflating. And honestly, I actually am counting down to ADP, to be honest with you, because I would love to go into the system and fix it, but at this point, there would just be so much work just to turn around and end up in ADP. So, and the contractor that we're using to help us with the data scrubbing, she's become aware of seeing a lot of the data elements that are not set up properly as she's trying to put it into ADP. So we're trying to be very aware of what we're doing as we move into the data from the current system into the new system, and understanding that we're going to have to work a little bit differently when we go to ADP.
A quick follow-up question. Is that also a challenge to the audit that you said we are behind?
No, because the audit is looking back so what does affect the audit is what's happening with the Maine PERS, all that, the prior information and data collection from that. But, as we move forward, hopefully the next audit will be better, and knowing what, our findings were this year, as we walk into ADP, we would make sure that we are able to make those corrections as we move into that system. So that way we can, at the next audit, we know we're going to have a pane of findings. Not all of them are going to go away, but hopefully the idea is to use that as a segue into the new system to make sure we cover those areas.
My goodness. Thank you. So I'm cognizant of the fact that we have 4 minutes left. So quickly, I want to just acknowledge all your hard work. I can tell how committed you are to making this right. I'm very excited that you're here. My 2, hopefully quick questions are, is there anything that you feel like you need to be successful that you don't have, and, things we might need to talk about? And also, what is realistic for the committee to expect in terms of progress by our next meeting in November?
Thank you. I appreciate you being noticing that. Ryan has been a great support system, and I've been able to hire. I know you probably know of the payroll manager. She's just started today that we hired, but I also have just received the offer letter for our purchasing manager. And she's starting on November 2nd. And we're also, so what I'm trying to do is I'm really trying to, what's going to make us successful is the support to allow me to continuously hire people that I feel are a good fit for, that's going to work with me. One of the things I explained to Ryan is that I tread slowly towards hiring employees because this is a big investment of time and training that I have to put into this person. And knowing the track record that we have here of the difficulty that it's going to take to get us out of here, I make it very clear and upfront to people that this is not an easy endeavor. This is not like a place you're going to be able to just collect a paycheck. So I'm trying to make sure that they understand that, there's a lot of hurdles here, but it's going to be something that's going to make you grow in a career. Ryan's been very supportive of that. And I think that's where I'm going to find my success, is being able to make sure that I am able to hire the right personnel that I know that's going to, tread through those deep waters with us and stick around more, even if it's more than a year. It takes about 3 years just to have a really good understanding of the depth of your own work. So, it's going to be hard, but, we'll get there. And next thing you know, this will be like, wow, I can't believe we were there one time. And, I'm really excited about this. This is, between the town, we had issues, and we got ourselves in a really good place within, I would always say it's about 3 to 4 years that it takes to get your engines roaring on all 8 cylinders. Oh,
sorry. I was just going to say, and you can't fix what you don't know about. So thank you for bringing this up. It is, I apologize for, cutting this conversation short, but I think many of us have conflicts at 3:00, so we need to wrap up. Certainly, if there are things that we didn't get to, I saw there was at least one more slide. Let me know, and we can certainly get that on the agenda for the November meeting. If there's more stuff that we need to talk through, and that November meeting will be on November 13th. So it's not 4 whole weeks away. In the last minute that we have, are there other things that anybody really, really, really needs to talk about right now? Okay. All right. And because we're in a committee meeting, it's less of a formal approach, but motion to adjourn. Thank you, Board Member Figdor. Second from Board Member Opperman. Show of hands. Wonderful. Thank you. And I hope everybody has a really, really good rest of your day. Thanks, everybody. Bye.